Previously on Sweet Projects. We left you on episode 3 of our multi-part series where we swapped a B8 444S Volvo V8 from an S80 sedan into our V70 wagon. In our 3-part series, we took you through removing both engines from both cars and migrating the V8 over to our V70, and we left you hanging on our first drive, and many of you have asked what has happened to the car since then. Unfortunately, due to us losing a lot of footage and returning back to work full-time, we never quite managed to pull an official 4th episode together. But to wrap things up from where we left before, on our first drive we heard a loud grinding noise from the rear of the car.
Got the hum from before.
Yeah. We initially thought this grinding noise might be as simple as a worn wheel bearing, but this didn't turn out to be the case. We actually discovered the entire rear differential was worn out, causing the noise, and we ended up swapping the entire rear subframe and diff assembly from our V8 donor car. We also noticed that the V8 was much quieter than we expected it to be, and much quieter than what the S80 was. This was due to us leaving the rear part of the exhaust assembly from our T6 V70 and just connecting that up to the V8. So we ended up swapping over the rear part of the exhaust from the S80 so that the entire exhaust from the headers back to the rear of the car was all from the original V8. This gave it the grumble that we had expected. The car also had a fault with the steering lock. It didn't work, and a message displayed on the dash advising of such. This message meant it would not have passed the necessary roadworthy inspection here in Victoria, and we needed to fix it before putting the car on the road. We had previously fitted a full digital gauge cluster from a later model V70 into this car, and we felt that that may have been the culprit, so we reverted it back to the original cluster. This was a wrong moving part, as it had completely bricked the car. Instead of now having a run-in V8 with an error, we had an immobiliser fault and the car didn't start at all. This happened a day before we were due to drop the car off for its roadworthy inspection, which we then had to promptly cancel. This issue left us stumped for quite some time, and we ended up studying various wiring diagrams in depth, and we ended up discovering that there was one wire difference between the S80 and the V70. We're not 100% sure if this was a difference caused by the change in the model year, as our S80 was a 2007 and the V70 was a 2008, or if it was a difference in the T6 and the V8. Either way, the S80 had one extra wire running from the central electronic module to the instrument cluster, which was the communication wire for the immobiliser and the steering column lock. We added this wire in, and thankfully the car fired right up and we had no more errors on the dash. We then booked the car back through and were able to get the car through its roadworthy inspection and back on the road. It was a relatively easy process, and once the car was on the road it quickly became a staple of our fleet. I was even daily driving it at one point. We did little and often upgrades to it, including an R-Design interior and a new tailgate with a rear spoiler. We drove the car around for quite a bit, including to the Volvo Nationals in 2022. But the more we drove it, the more we noticed a burning smell through the cabin, and the car was losing a lot of oil. We quickly realised that many of the seals had dried up, and the car was now leaking oil through all these seals and onto the exhaust, causing the smell. We did just try replacing the valve cover seals, as this is a very common fault on these engines. However, this did not completely solve our issue, as the timing cover seals were also perished and leaking. We realised that the engine would need to come back out and we would need to reseal it completely. At this point, the car had hit 240,000 kilometres and it was due for a major service. The air conditioning compressor had died, the front shocks had gone soft, and we had oil hemorrhaging out of it. We decided to park the car up and start saving the funds and tackle all these issues in one hit and revive our V8 project. Now, more than 2 years since our last episode, we are finally here and we're ready.